You're listening to the Devil Dog Talk Show.
This show contains explicit material and is recommended for ages 18 and older for mature audiences only. But hey, it's the internet.
I want to get right into it for two reasons. I don't want to, eat away at your day too much, but also there's a lot to cover. So first I want to welcome you to the Devil Doc Talk Show. Today we have Andrew D'Angelo, and you have so much going on. I don't want to shortcut it, and I don't want to miss too much. So I just really want to have you kind of introduce yourself, and then we'll go on from there. How's that sound?
That sounds great. It's great to be with everybody today. Well, my name's Andrew D'Angelo. Many of your listeners may be more familiar with my older brother, Steve D'Angelo. The two of us have been at it in cannabis for, well, my brother started in the early 70s. I started in the early 80s. My brother's about 10 years older than me, so I had some growing up to do before I could work with the plant and advocate for the plant. So, over all that time, we've had lots of different cannabis companies and organizations that we've started, and some of them were more successful than others. Here in California, we grew up on the East Coast. We came to California not too long after medical was legalized. We worked on that effort in 1996 with Dennis Perone and that whole crew in San Francisco. We were basically just sending money at that point.
Nice.
To the cause. I actually was going to school in San Francisco, so I got to be kind of in the trenches with Dennis and them for a little bit of that. That was our first big victory since Prohibition began, and 60 years prior, Prohibition had begun. So we wanted to open a dispensary, medical cannabis dispensary, and we finally had the opportunity to do that in 2006 in Oakland, and that's when we started our organization called Harborside Health Center, and we were more like a community wellness center than we were pure dispensary. Yes, we distributed cannabis, but we also had free classes people could take on how to grow your own medicine. We sold people clones and seeds, really cheap. We had free health classes like yoga and acupuncture the community could take advantage of. And we had a care package program for poor folks to get free medicine. We had something called the Patient Activist Resource Center, which allowed people to get free medicine in exchange for writing a letter to a cannabis prisoner or a politician. And so Harborside blew up. The world loved it, and we became a pretty big name in cannabis for a while there. And then, adult use happened in California in 2018, Prop 64. That framework was kind of a disaster for a company like Harborside and a lot of legacy medical cannabis companies that served patients in California. A lot of us struggled with the new framework. It was particularly hard for me and my brother because we worked on the framework and, lost a lot of battles along the way. But, when Sean Parker, the billionaire, got 64 on the ballot, we felt like we had to support it. I'm not sure that was the right decision in retrospect, but because we had a very good framework under the medical program, and our people were allowed to really be taken care of and create models that I think were a lot more friendly to customers and patients and communities than some of the models we're seeing now in the adult use legalization world here in California. And the framework's wrong. We all know that regulations and taxes and bans and NIMBYism and all the rest of the problems that plague everything in California, from affordable housing to homelessness, are plaguing cannabis now too. The framework's wrong, and we haven't been able to fix it, and it's been a little bit of a nightmare. So that was the Harborside story. When I left Harborside the only way Harborside could survive all of that was to become a public company. And that meant me and my brother had to leave. And so we started a nonprofit organization after that called Last Prisoner Project. Last Prisoner Project's mission is to free all cannabis prisoners basically in the country and the whole world. It is our hope that we can shut our doors someday because everybody's out of prison. And we have a very long way to go, certainly globally, but even nationally, to get all cannabis prisoners out of prison. So I've been working on that for the last 3 or 4 years. The organization has, similar to Harborside, the community has really responded to Last Prisoner Project. We have all kinds of community partners, from small individual donors who give us $5 to, big cannabis companies like Dutchie that have pledged us $1 million. So, and we're just going to stay at it until we get everybody out of prison, until we get people re-entered into society. And that's my nonprofit. And then I also have to make a living like all of us do.
Correct.
And so,
right.
there's that part of life, of course. And so, I consult, and I'm a strategic advisor now. And I help entrepreneurs build their own cannabis companies and create their own Harborsides out there in the world. And I do most of my work outside of California. I do have 1 or 2 clients here in California. And I have a couple clients outside the United States now. And my little consulting business has several different consultants that I'm working with within my business. And we're chugging along, and it's a lot of fun for me because, Harborside for 15 years, I woke up every morning and tried to make this a great company, one company, a great company. Now I wake up every morning, I try to make several companies, great companies, my clients' companies, great companies, and I can build the industry more horizontally, and more widely than I was able to in some respects with Harborside. So that's what I'm up to these days. That's who I am. That's what I'm all about.
That's wonderful. Like, honestly, I was reading up on you and just trying to keep up with the vast experiences and time frames that you've been involved in the cannabis industry, and what it takes to become more than what we used to be in cannabis. Like you were saying, back before even medicinal was recognized. This was before my time, but from paying attention to the culture, right, from getting into it, from after serving in the military and transitioning out and trying all the different medications and finding out that just wasn't for me. I started really looking into it because I like history, and I like I like the technical stuff. Like, I was a lab tech and also a FMF corpsman when I was in the Navy, and to me, it's the devil's in the details, right? And to figure out how to build something that's worthwhile or build something that's great, you have to start with the basics. And a lot of people don't recognize that in 1995, I believe it was passed, the whole Medicinal Act. And from then forward till 2018, like you brought up with the Adult Use Act, the Prop 64, there was a very approachable model of business and sales. Now, like what you're saying, it's just gone extremely not just corporate, but very, very, very big. Because I'm not knocking the corporate side and bringing flowers to people. That it's passing a lot of people's eases or allowing people to calm down about cannabis because they're seeing more and more use. They're seeing what it actually does. So I think it does help. But like you were saying, it does put the legacy participants, right, of cannabis production, farming, and distribution sales at a very large disadvantage, which is interesting because, like you brought up, the Harborside and the growth model that they had, the educational programs, and also the fact that clone distribution or sales, genetics was kind of the bigger thing. which I find beautiful. I like all different types of genetics. I'm not a one way or the other type of guy. And that brings me to the question about the California. Let me see if I get this right on my note. California Cannabis Industry Association, and leveling up the quality and standards of cannabis in California. How was that? And did you utilize your experiences in Harborside and those educational programs and things that you guys developed there to kind of coordinate a better standard for those who are now in this atmosphere of larger cannabis?
Well, I wish I could tell you that the CCIA is sort of the acronym we use for California Cannabis Industry Association. I wish I could tell you that CCIA was able to help a lot of legacy people and help educate folks and get people into the market. We did as much of that as we could. I think the organization still is doing that. I was a founding board member, and I served on the board while I was at Harborside for about, 7 or 8 years. I was on the board of CCIA, quite some time. And the organization was founded after Prop 19 failed. So you may remember that we tried to do adult use legalization in 2010 with an initiative called Prop 19. And Prop 19 failed at the ballot box. And there was a lot of reasons why it failed, mainly because we put it on the ballot in a non-presidential election year. If we had just put it on the ballot in 2012 instead of 2010, we would have won. But that was a strategic error that was made. So after 19 failed, the things that we were hearing from lawmakers and politicians were, you weren't well organized enough on the corporate level, on the business level. You have an industry, because we did at that point have a very robust medical industry, but you don't have any. You're not organized. So we had passed laws on the medical side. We had failed on the adult use side, and when you fail and you lose, there's consequences. And the federal government came in California and started busting people after 19 failed. And they came after Harborside in 2012 with a forfeiture action, which we beat them back on. But they came after us on 280E too. And that one they were more successful with. So, and they shut down hundreds of dispensaries in California after 19 failed. So we had to do something because there was blood all over the streets, and growers especially were getting busted because they didn't have licensing to protect them like we did. So it was a very difficult moment. And so the organization was founded to try to organize the industry, try to get more representation, try to, get more support from the political classes so that when we put something on the ballot, we can be successful the next time. And so that's where the organization was started from. And, it took a number of years to when we started, there was no regulations for medical, which was in some ways not a bad thing. But we also had a lot of bans. A lot of local communities had banned medical dispensaries, had banned, even though we passed Prop 215, they wouldn't allow licensing to happen. They wouldn't allow a dispensary to open. So we didn't, at that time, we were trying to change that. We wanted to open the whole state up so that we could have even more robust industry. And so we were engaged with Sacramento trying to do that. And then, we were targeting a presidential election year to put it on the ballot again. And 2016 was that year. And, we had a pretty good framework going into negotiations but because you have to fund these things. The funding for a ballot initiative doesn't just materialize.
Right.
And you know, in those days there was no GoFundMe's or anything like that, and so
exactly. So it's hard to pull in the resources for something like that.
It takes millions of dollars, millions and millions of dollars. So this guy named Sean Parker, you may remember him. He was one of the early founders of Facebook, and he's a billionaire in Silicon Valley. He decided he wanted to legalize weed, and so he gave us the money, but he also brought in all these fancy Democratic Party operatives and Gavin Newsom's people and all these fancy lobbyists. And they said the only way that you can win at the ballot box is if you make a framework that allows local people to ban and gives people the right to tax and regulate all this other stuff. And he had the money to put it on the ballot. And so, we negotiated as best we could. And then we the framework was eventually put on the ballot by him. And it won because it was a presidential election year. It was 2016. Even though the community was a little divided, there was quite a few people in the cannabis community who said, don't vote for it. And those folks, I think in hindsight, were probably correct. But, it passed. And so, it
did pass.
It did pass. And then it took from November 2016 to January 1, 2018 to sort of develop the rules. And then adult use sales started in January 1, 2018. About 10 days into adult use sales, we knew the framework was broken and that we were in big trouble because all of our patients left and went to the legacy market. And the only people that were in the dispensaries were cannabis curious people with money. So, and they don't buy a lot of weed.
Right.
They might buy a vape pen and a gummy, but they're not going to buy an ounce of weed. And so we've been playing catch up ever since, man, and trying to get the legislature. CCIA is one group, but there's a lot of trade organizations now. CCIA was one of the first, but in California, but there's a lot of them now. If you Google California Cannabis Trade Associations, you will get a list of at least 50. And while that's great that we have so many warriors on the field, on the battlefield, what's bad about that is our army is fragmented. And it's easy for the enemy to isolate those fragments and knock them off one at a time, or put us against each other. Or the corporate guys come in and they put us against each other. And then
big
nothing
money does have a tendency to do that, huh?
Yeah, and then nothing happens. We don't get reform.
We get stagnation, and it's kind of like that circular, what's best. We don't want to make mistakes, but we also don't want to trip over our own selves. We don't want to over budgetize. We don't want to under budget. And then the whole complexities of politics get involved. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
So we're in kind of a mess right now in California. Groups like CCIA and others are trying to, and the thing that's frustrating for me, I'm sure most of your listeners, I don't like incremental change, and that's how politics works. Even when the Democrats have a supermajority in effing Sacramento, they can do whatever they want. And they have a supermajority. They can pass any bill they want. They call themselves progressive, but they're not when it comes to cannabis policy. They're very, very conservative.
Nobody wants to be on the hook for it. Nobody wants to be held liable for a big shift. And to bring up another one of the discussion points that I really want to focus in on is it's kind of like the Last Prisoner project that you got going, which is a great nonprofit that I think is just remarkable in the sense of not forgetting those who really initiated the start of this now large corporate and highly governmentized field of cannabis, right? And those are the people that, that were in those busts, like you were discussing, that got hit right after, which sounds horrible for a government to do that, right? Oh, we're trying to use the system actually to get change. So then you target the people that are participating in that hopeful change, and then you create problems, right? So I really want to hit on the Last Prisoner Project for a moment and just discuss the motivation behind that, as well as how did the not just the motivation, but how did the process begin with that?
Well, it's the genesis of Last Prisoner Project is just how many times my family has gotten busted and how many people we know have gotten busted. And we've just been very conscious of our prisoners our entire careers, me and my brother. The difference with Last Prisoner Project is we finally had an opportunity after Harborside to actually start a nonprofit organization whose sole focus was to release prisoners, cannabis prisoners. We saw a need for that. There were other folks doing things like making sure our prisoners have money in their commissary accounts and things like that. But they're because getting people that are post-conviction, we're a post-conviction organization. We don't help people win their appeals because there are other groups that do that. What we do is after you've exhausted all your appeals, we help you get out. And that means clemency petitions in almost all cases. Sometime the other thing that and a clemency petition is basically when you petition the governor to pardon you, or the president, if you're in federal lockup. And it's a very long, hard, expensive process that very few families have the resources to go through. And so our people sit in jail. So we try to, that's what we wanted to address that situation because, my Last Prisoner Project, like so many things I've done in my career, me and my brother did it. And it was really my brother's idea. And then I sort of piled on like I do. And we, marched hand in hand down the path of starting this organization together. And so that was the mission, right? And still is the mission, because we didn't feel like we could be in conference rooms with corporate cannabis people talking about billion-dollar deals and, tens of millions of dollars being invested in cultivation facilities and, people that are manufacturing huge amounts of products and, shipping them all over states and multi-state operators. And it's like, hold on a second, you're growing weed. That's illegal. People are in prison for that, but you don't go to prison for that. You make a lot of money doing that. Or maybe you lose a lot of money doing that, which seems to be the case with most of the bigger companies right now. But you get to do it, right? You're not in prison, and it's the same thing, And so it's morally reprehensible to put somebody in a cage for weed in any circumstance. But when you also have other people that are not in a cage doing the same thing, we've got a moral dilemma that is beyond incomprehensible, and we got to do something about it. So, so one of the reasons LPP has been successful as a fundraising organization is we go to the industry and we just shame people, and we say, you can't make all this money and not donate to this. You have to donate to this. We have to get people out, and if you donate to this, you'll be a more authentic player, because you'll be helping the people that helped you become legitimate.
Right.
You'll be helping them get out of prison. So, it's worked very well. I can't say that we are ready to shut our doors because we've gotten everybody out. There's still thousands of people locked up, and certainly globally, we've got a very long way to go. But we've gotten some people out, and that's made a huge difference in people's lives. Already this year, we've given over $1 million in reentry grants.
Wow.
Yeah, man, and they're $5,000 a pop. So, if you're been released from prison recently, I wish I could give people that grant the day they get out of prison, but I can't because it has to go through a bank account, and it has to be documented, and I have to have, because I'm a nonprofit 501c3, the IRS makes me document.
No, but that's legitimate. But do you see how you're preparing people to understand I love how you're giving more to people right now than I think they understand, because being a veteran, going through the VA process, having grants, benefits, all this great nonprofit people around you all the time, what they never explain is the process. And you are, not only leading the nonprofit, right? But you're literally sharing, hey, control your expectations. This is how this works, right? And I think that leads to better outcomes, like you were saying, going into the morality conversation, ethic conversation. That to me breathes a very very moral and empathetic person that understands adversity and frustration very well. So no, I appreciate that, man. That's really good to know. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think our community needs to know how all of these things operate so that the community can hold us accountable in the right way. So we're not throwing hate at each other when we hold each other accountable and saying and being wrong. Okay. And so, that's why I explain the mechanisms of these grants, because, it takes a little while for the recipient to get it. But even if you're on week 5 and you get $5,000, or week 8 or week 12 and you get $5,000 from us, it makes a huge difference in people's lives. Okay. And all of a sudden, maybe you have enough breathing room to go get a job. Maybe you have enough for a deposit for an apartment. Maybe, and I wish they could be $10,000 grants. We don't have the resources to make them, more than that. In fact, we're probably going to have to make them a little smaller, the maximum, just because we need to serve more people. But you can check out our Instagram and some of our other social media, and you can hear stories from people that got these grants and what it enabled them to do. And it's all because of your listeners. It's all because of the community. It's all because of our donors. It's all because of, the programs we have. Most of the money we get are in small donations, and from customers that give their change at the dispensary counter, or send us $5 during a virtual fundraiser, or text 24365 and make a donation that way. It's either 24365 or it's 36524. I think it's 24365. And so that's it's because of all of us working together that we're able to provide these grants to people and do these clemency petitions and try to change laws so that we can get people out when legalization happens, not after legalization happens, and not one at a time. There's one of the things we're fighting for is something called retroactive release. And what that means is, as soon as somebody legalizes weed anywhere, retroactive release means everybody gets released the day after that happens. Like,
that is awesome.
Day. And we haven't been able to get that passed anywhere yet. I'm ashamed to say. We've been working hard, but it's something politicians have a very hard time embracing. Law enforcement and prosecutors and groups like that have very strong lobbying organizations behind them, resist it too. And the democratic process sort of doesn't go our way. yet. So, but we're getting a little bit closer. We've managed to do it with expungement. Not just us, but other nonprofits have managed to do what we call blanket expungement, where thousands of people's records get expunged all at once. But even if your record gets expunged that way, you still need to get a lawyer and get paperwork together from the court and all this other stuff. So, and that can cost some money. And, so you see these expungement events that nonprofits do, and we're going to have more of them in California coming up. LPP does not do expungement events. We support them, but other nonprofits, actually do them. And we just passed a bill in California to force county prosecutors to expunge records, because it's in 64. But the county prosecutors in especially conservative areas, like probably where you're calling from today, they won't do it. They will not do it. And so we had to pass another law that says you have to do this. And so I expect to see more expungement clinics and happening in the community in the next year or two. So keep your eyes and ears open, those of you that may have a cannabis arrest or conviction, and you want that expunged from your record.
That's awesome. Now, just to keep things in perspective, right? You have these just great experiences, years and years of professional application and a depth of knowledge, and you initiated a nonprofit with your brother, the Last Prisoner Project. There we go. Had a little brain fart there. And now you're starting a production company, or you have already, with your brother, called Dab. And I just wanted to hit on that for maybe a couple more minutes while we have you, and then roll into some shameless, or I should say shameful plugs, but the ones that help people, because it clearly is where your target vision is and interest is, to help give back to the cannabis community and provide life again for some of the people that have been creating a just wonderful medicine, in my eyes, for everybody. Now, in the world of cannabis, we can clearly see that that's true. So really quick, Dab, what is that about?
Dab Productions, D'Angelo Brothers Productions. Well, my brother and I, when you peel back everything and you ask yourself, well, what is the core of what these guys do? And it's really creativity, because to change laws, or to create social change that's positive, or to open a dispensary, or to sell weed, or to grow good weed, or brand weed, or any of these things requires a lot of creativity. So we've sort of exercised that muscle for a long time together, and we have ambitions to tell cannabis stories, whether it be by speaking, or whether that be making documentaries, or whether that be making TV series, narrative, films. We have our hands in a few different things. We're knocking on the door of Hollywood. I can't say that Hollywood's letting us in. We did do Weed Wars. Some of you may remember when we had Harborside, we did Weed Wars, which was the first reality TV show about a legal medical cannabis company. And we had a film that we helped produce and appeared in called CBD Nation, which was all about the origin story of CBD and how these kids with epilepsy, played such a huge role in bringing CBD to the world. And now there's a CBD shop on every corner in just about every country of the world. And so we told that story with CBD Nation. And we're cooking up some others. There's a film called, oh God, what is it? I think it's called American Pot, or Pot America, or something like that. And it's appearing at the Oakland International Film Festival. It's premiering on the 24th of September. And that is it's about Oaksterdam University. But I appear in the film. My brother appears in the film. Sort of the Northern California, Oakland OGs of cannabis appear in the film. And it's a real celebration of Oaksterdam and the activists. Oaksterdam and the activists at Oaksterdam are the ones that did Prop 19. So it's sort of a celebration of their work. And they've also educated an awful lot of people through Oaksterdam University and done a great job with that, by the way, and have sent out thousands of little cannabis warriors out into the world that have worked and built the industry and are not little anymore, are all grown up now and are the next generation of leaders for our movement and industry. So that's another project that we didn't produce that one, but you know, we appear in it. And that's kind of what the Dab Productions is. We, you know, if you follow my brother's social media or mine, you'll see we make a lot of videos. We do a lot of traveling. We communicate when we're speaking at conferences. We share all that with our audiences, our followers. Feel free to follow us on social media, and you can experience some of that. And all that is really coming out of Dab Productions, one way or the other. So that's kind of what Dab Productions is.
Nice.
And
that's awesome.
that's our passion project. That's where we have fun, you know?
Yeah, it's all about having fun and being creative, man. That's what we're about here at the Devil Dog Talk Show. And I'd just like to let our listeners know, what are your links? I understand that you have quite the few. Let me see if we got
most of my social is Andrew_D'Angelo. So I think that's Twitter, Instagram. LinkedIn is just Andrew D'Angelo. I'm on TikTok. I think that's Andrew_D'Angelo. TikTok is something I'm having some fun with right now. And I have my website, andrewdangelo.com, and that's really where, and I have a column on Forbes. You can follow me on Forbes at Andrew D'Angelo on Forbes, and read my columns. So, you know, that's I think, and there's lastprisonerproject.org. Of course, last but most important is that. And there's a great tab called Get Active, I think, or Get Involved, one of those two. And if you click on that, it shows you how to donate. And it also, if you don't have money to donate, it teaches you how to send a letter to a prisoner. And you can even do it electronically these days, so you don't even have to pay for a stamp.
Nice.
So those are all the links.
That's awesome, man. And I couldn't appreciate your time more. I guarantee you got a lot of things booked up, so I appreciate your time today for discussing yourself, Andrew D'Angelo, and all the different things that you have going on. I'd love to have you back on throughout our season and follow-up seasons just to see how the projects are going.
Yeah, man. We didn't get a chance to talk about vets, and I didn't get a chance to thank you for your service. But you know, there's a lot going on with vets and cannabis, as always, you know. And
completely agree. Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm very excited about, to kind of have you introduced to our listeners a bit more, and maybe carry on a little bit more time throughout the season, and just kind of repeat the things that we discussed today, and then move forward with the conversation about vets, like you were saying. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate what you do, and couldn't be happier with this quick 30 that we're going to be putting out for our listeners today. And the main reasons why is because we really want to follow up with a lot of the things that are progressing with cannabis, but also the advocates and how to get involved and also fund the things that we need to get done. Again, this is Andrew D'Angelo, and we thank him for coming on to the Devil Dog Talk Show today. All right, D'Angelo, oh my God. Thank you so much, Andrew. I really appreciate your time today, and pretty much wrapping it up here at that point.
Well, fantastic to be with you, Joseph. Thank you for having me.
No, anytime. If you have any additional things that you have coming up, events like that and whatnot, we'll try to support that in any which way we can.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care, man.
Okay, bye-bye.
Internet. Hello. Muassasan العيش نبث وأنا نسقي أسقي أفنى مكبسنا عيش نبث تسقي أسقي أشياء.
Well, I didn't mean to say.